Hello, guys. Eric and Kim here. We're going to review Glass Onion, aka, as the marketing calls it, Glass Onion: a Knives Out mystery. This is the sequel to Knives Out, which of course was a big hit in 2019. Sequels being released under odd circumstances. We'll talk about that, I think, a little bit more later, distribution wise. But the basics here, and it's really hard, Kim, to talk about mysteries and give too much plot because you don't want to say too
Oh,
much.
yeah, don't slip. If you do slip,
Yeah,
cut it
I,
out.
I guess I'll just the trailer says this, so I think we can say this. That Edward Norton plays Miles Braun, who's like a tech billionaire, and he gathers a group of old friends to come to his private Greek island. But he also invited is Benoit Blanc, the renowned detective played by Daniel Craig, and it's a murder mystery party. But I think it's safe to say it won't just stay a murder mystery party, or what kind of a sequel to Knives Out would that be? Things will happen, secrets will be revealed, and Benoit Blanc will have to figure some stuff out. Kim, what did you think? I guess in sort of a quick nutshell, what were what did you think? Were you a big Knives Out fan, and what did you think of Glass Onion?
I was a medium
Hmm.
Knives Out fan, and I know that film and Ryan Johnson and by extension further Knives Out films, and from what I've read from early reviews, uh, these films can do no wrong for a lot of people, but this did not set my world alight. Yeah, so we can go into more detail after you've told us what you think briefly.
I really enjoy these movies. I'm not at the like mega love level. Yeah, I see what you mean, that like there is a level of love these movies have that I have not reached. But I really enjoyed. I actually enjoyed this one more than the first. And again, I totally enjoyed the first. It was just a little bit like, okay, that was fun. And not to say that this one was like groundbreaking, amazing, but I thought this was really fun. Like I had a quite a good time watching it, even though I still agree with you that like I'm not quite at that level of people that are sort of seem to be like kind of rapturous about it. But I do think he knows how to make this sort of, this is very comedic by design. And sort of this sort of snappy, witty lark of lark with murder, I do enjoy like the vibe he's going for and the vibe it's operating at. But even has there's a slight temperament there for me.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, it is kind of snappy and witty, and I would say the opposite, that I think I prefer the original
Mhm.
more than this one. But it didn't make me laugh. I didn't laugh once,
Mm.
although, it was light throughout, and I can see where it's supposed to be funny. And interestingly, and I tweeted this, that not one there wasn't one audible laugh in the screening I was in.
Ah.
Nobody laughed, and there were also a high percentage of people leaving to go to the bathroom, which tends to only happen when people aren't fully engaged with the film.
It's so interesting because I've seen this happen. I personally, right, have gone to see the same movie twice and sat with an audience that was completely different, like vibe wise and
Yeah.
where they were operating. Because I actually saw this with a very good audience. Like I saw this with an audience that was very into it, laughing a lot, and of course, like yeah, that's just like it's like a weird group thing. And sometimes it's like, are you vibing with it or are you not?
Yeah, yeah. But I
um,
was definitely on the side of not really, it wasn't really working for me. I thought it felt too self-satisfied and unsubtle. And I know, that it's a satire and it's gonna kind of make its points obviously. But it kept me because of that, it kind of kept me at arm's length the whole time. And I never felt fully engaged with it. I didn't really, um gel with the characters. I thought all the characters were two-dimensional, even though except for one, even though the point of it is to kind of present them as stereotypes, and then as the film goes on, peel the layers and reveal depths. But I still felt that they were two-dimensional, and yeah, completely unsubtle. Even Daniel Craig as Benoit Blanc explains the concept of the glass onion to us at one point, which didn't need explaining, I think. So
Yeah, regarding that title, which is a Beatles song, it is a plot point in the movie. The glass onion is something talked about, discussed, what it is and what it means. It's fun. Have you seen the menu yet, Kim?
no.
I will say I don't know if we're going to do a full review on here, so I'll just say I freaking love the menu, like just
Mm.
unabashedly one of my favorite movies here. It's a little bit similar to Glass Onion in that they're both kind of making commentary about sort of class status and like people of a certain status and how they view people, and they're both very unsubtle about it. But I did like I even though I really liked Glass Onion, the menu kind of just goes even further with just how pointed it is in a way that I think really works. But we're not talking about the menu. Let's talk about these characters. You mentioned in passing, but it's like, Daniel Craig is the billionaire. You got Janelle Monáe has his former business partner. They had falling out. Catherine Hahn is the politician. Leslie Odom Jr. is a scientist. Kate Hudson is a movie star. They're the old friends, and then there's a couple of kind of hangers on that accompany them. Sorry, I forgot to mention Dave Bautista has the YouTube star. And Madeline Klein plays his young girlfriend, Batista's young girlfriend. Jessica Henwick plays the assistant to Kate Hudson's movie star character, or I'm sorry, not movie star, a supermodel. I kept thinking she was a movie star, and then they're like, no, she's a model turned designer.
Yeah.
Yeah, like
And just that you said Daniel Craig is the billionaire, just to correct, it was Ed
oh,
Norton. I know that you know that, and it was a slip, but just
apparently I needed some coffee this morning, Kim. No, they changed it. That'd be really funny if Daniel Craig came back, but he was
yeah.
not Benoit Blanc. Edward Norton was Benoit Blanc. They wanted to mess with you in every way.
Oh, what a twist!
What a twist. Yeah, I mean, this is a really fun group of actors, and I think they're clearly like having a ball doing this. It's so funny, Kim, because I think you and I agree on a lot of things in this movie. It's just I will say the vibing thing I was more into it because I do agree that several of these characters remain kind of surface by the end. Like,
Mm.
especially when I think about Catherine Hahn, who I love. Her character, Claire, the politician, and Leslie Odom Jr. as the scientist Lionel, who are both great actors, but I don't think we get that in depth on their characters. They just kind of like they're part of the story. But I did think everyone was really fun. I really like Batista. I really feel like we've seen other wrestlers turn actors give very good performances with Dwayne Johnson and John Cena, but Dave Batista like really feels like, damn, this guy can do some stuff, and this is obviously another comedic role for him. But I don't know. I really just kind of like how he operates, the sort of interesting, strange thoughtfulness he brings to his characters, even characters who might be a little dim-witted at times. Yeah, I it's funny, we're about to record another review with Dave Bautista right after this. But really liked him. But I will say, to me, the standout here was Janelle Monáe, who
Yes,
I've only
agree.
seen in a couple things. Obviously I know her as a musician, but I really thought she was excellent here.
I agree. She brought nuance to her performance that none of the others did for me. Even Dave Bautista, I thought he was a little bit. I completely agree with you. As an actor, he is far more layered than you might initially judge him as being.
Mhm.
But when I saw him in Blade Runner 2049, that was it.
Yeah.
I that kind of gave me a really good idea of his range, but I don't think he's used to the fullest here. But Janelle Monáe absolutely moved me and pulled me in a way that I think probably no other elements of the film did.
She to me was the standout, but I also really liked Edward Norton, who kind of gets to lean into some of his douchier characters
Mhm.
with this guy, and I really still love Daniel Craig as Benoit Blanc, who it's a fine line, right? Because of course, as people joked about in the first movie, this very goofy Foghorn Leghorn accent, um, and like how goofy is too goofy, but I think I still kind of go with it, and the idea that he's very much, and I think Ryan Johnson even said he's a fan of Columbo. He's very much a modern Columbo, right? Like the I will disarm you by seeming like kind of a silly, a guy who's not nearly as sharp as I am. It's a funny thing here because I think even much more than the first movie, and I haven't seen the first movie in a couple of years, but this movie really kind of leans into him being a famous detective, like a very famous detective. But I still think kind of like the attitude he brings to it is very fun. Um, and I really am into it, even though I completely understand that it goes so far to crossing the line, like what he's doing with it. But I still think it works because him and Ryan Johnson kind of are kind of having this sort of playful wink, with the audience about how he operates. What did you think of Norton though in the film?
Well, I just wanted to chime in on Daniel Craig there
Mhm,
first of all, because I agree that he's this amalgam of Columbo and Poirot, actually, who is a
mhm.
famous detective in the Agatha Christie
Who we're
novel.
getting simultaneous movie franchise with right now.
Yes, but um, for me, I just feel that Daniel Craig is awkward in the role, and I don't think he disappears into the character the way, like a David Suchet or a Peter Ustinov does in terms of Poirot, and the same with Peter Falker's Columbo. And I think the key to a great whodunit is in the detective. And the detective should be kind of idiosyncratic and also very human. And I think the idiosyncrasies in Benoit Blanc are built using costume and the accent really. And I don't think it comes from the performance or the script for me. And I think Craig is best when he's underplaying roles. I loved him in the last Bond film he did, which I thought was a kind of a real remarkably subtle performance for the kind of James Bond character. And he doesn't work for me here. Sorry, Daniel.
Yeah, he'll forgive you. I do like goofy Daniel Craig. I like serious Daniel Craig too.
Yeah.
But I loved him in Logan Lucky, and I really do enjoy him in this. It's so wacky a performance, but yeah, it does sort of just it does work for me. But I totally get why it's not for everybody because it is so sort of heightened and pushed. Now it's funny. I have a couple questions for you that I now kind of feel I know the answer for going into this because Kim and I had not talked about this at all beforehand. So now I think I know your answer already. But so as I mentioned at the top, distribution wise, this is an interesting thing because it's a sequel to a big blockbuster hit movie, especially this in this day and age where it's really hard to launch like an original IP and be a hit. But then Netflix purchased rights to the sequels, two sequels that we're getting a third. And so this is a Netflix produced movie, but it will play in theaters, but just for 1 week. It's the widest distribution Netflix has ever done for a movie here in the US. It's a big deal because they got all the major chains for the first time to release one of their movies, but just for a week on November 23rd. And then it won't be anywhere for a few weeks. And then it's going to be on Netflix December 23rd. Now, my question for you, Kim, that I think I know the answer for is, to you, would you feel like, oh, this movie should have gotten like a full theatrical run? Like this movie deserves it and it would play best that way? Or is it fine that it's a Netflix movie?
Well, I think a lot of people are going to really enjoy it. And there are big set pieces in this that work on the big screen. And one of my favorite sequences in it which you see a bit of in the trailer, is when Janelle Monáe's character is kind of hiding in the house and there's a shadow running. And I love the way that was shot and lit. And that was really effective for me on the big screen. So I think it probably does. I think if it got a longer run, it would make the money. And because of the time of year that it's coming out, people, I think, are craving films like this at the holidays.
Mhm.
And I'm not saying I wouldn't revisit it and maybe enjoy it more at Christmas when I want something on in the background. That sounds awful, but not
No,
on the
no.
big, yeah, not on the big screen. Then I'd be watching it on the TV. So um, yes, is the
Okay.
short answer.
No, no. I mean, but so that more support than I thought you might have. But what you were
Yeah,
saying about having it on the background, that's legitimate because let's face it, when a movie is released straight to Netflix, that is the implicit threat, the implicit
yeah,
possibility is, hey, oh, there's a new Knives Out movie. Let's throw it on when everyone's over for Christmas and they're cross talking and barely paying attention. There will be a lot of that. I bet this movie gets great viewership over the holidays, over Christmas holidays on Netflix with people that are half paying attention. Um, The reason I was 100% on board for theatrical, but again, you were not as against it as I thought, was
No.
because it did operate. It worked as a comedy for me better, and because my audience was like enjoying it more as a comedy. And there's been a lot said about sort of the death of the theatrical comedy. And even this one, of course, it's not a pure comedy because it's a murder mystery comedy.
Mhm.
So it still has like people have pointed out, it's like you can still get people in the theaters for comedy if it's a sci-fi comedy, if it's this like layers. It's just hard to get them for a straight up comedy. This is still a cheat, but because it did work for me, has that I was like, oh, this was a really fun sort of communal experience. But I also agree with you. It's like Brian Johnson is obviously a very talented visual director, and there's some really cool visual moments here. What they do with lighting and some of like sort of sort of the some of the spinning around and ways they reveal things are really cool. And I also want to mention is where I'll be delicate because I don't want to give away anything about plot, but murder mysteries by their design are going to hold back from the audience and they're going to like, we, the filmmaker, we knew stuff you didn't know, and here's that information dump. And how much that feels like a cheat versus how much it's like, this is cool to find out is always going to be a tricky thing. But I actually really enjoy how this movie does it. It holds back a lot, but I really enjoyed when they start to reveal what they've held back from us. And that's my cagey way of saying something I hope makes sense. Kim, do you cagily agree or disagree with me?
um, I saw what they were doing and kind of appreciated it, but because of all the ways it manages to distance me, the viewer, from the story, from engaging in anything, I found it quite tedious as a
Mm,
viewer.
gotcha.
Yeah, so and manipulative, but I always have always admiration for someone who writes and puts together a who done it, because it involves intricate interweaving of characters and plot points, and I couldn't do it.
Same here. Lastly, this is running longer than I expected to in the first place. That's because we have a spirited debate. Have you ever seen The Last of Sheila, Kim?
I have, yes. And I would say that is, I know uh, Johnson has said that
Mm,
was a big influence on him,
yes.
and there are clear parallels with this film in Glass Onion. And but I would say The Last of Sheila is quite a superior film in many ways.
Yeah, I'll somewhat agree on that. And that I just saw Last of Sheila for the first time a few months ago. Absolutely loved it. Then when I saw the trailer to Glass Onion, I was like, "This is the Last of Sheila." And then I saw that Ryan Johnson acknowledged and it's not a carbon copy. Just the basic setup is pretty similar. I would highly recommend it to everyone. And as much as I really like Glass Onion, yes, Last of Sheila is even better. Kim, what would you rate this movie out of 5 stars?
Well, I'm probably rating it higher than you might have expected. So I'm going to give it a 3
Okay.
because of those moments that I thought worked really well cinematically. And kudos to Ryan Johnson, as I said, for plotting a fairly involved murder mystery. But yeah, the fact that it otherwise did not make me laugh or engage me as fully as I wanted it to, it is not getting any more than that.
Hey, three's it's on the recommendation side for the most part. I'm giving it 4 out of 5. Like I said, I actually I like this a little more than the first one. I thought it was really great fun. My biggest criticism would be that some of those supporting characters in such a great cast I wish had been a little more filled out. Because when you've got Catherine Hahn, I'm like, you could do more with Catherine Hahn and Leslie Odom Jr. But I still really enjoyed performances and a lot of the characters and the twists and turns here. So those are our thoughts on Glass Onion: A Knives Out Mystery, which will be in theaters briefly and then on Netflix. That's it for now, guys. Keep it here at Fandom for plenty more.